God, we feel your spirit in this place. We feel you calling us to dance, to live your joy and your love. God, I ask that you guide my words, guide all of our hearts toward you. Amen. So, all of us remember. All of us remember where we were a year ago tomorrow. Where were you when you heard? Did you wake up, if you're like me, and wake up and then you're still in bed and you're looking at Facebook or whatever else on your phone? I remember waking up and the first bit of news, quite early in the morning, about 5 o'clock in the morning, I heard someone has been shot at a gay bar in Orlando. Well, that sounds uncomfortable. Then a little while later, we heard the news that up to a dozen people had been shot at a gay bar in Orlando. A dozen people. How could this be real? I remember searching up the news to see if any of them had died. I couldn't imagine 12 people having been shot. And then we came to church. A lot of us who are here today were here that day. And we just kept hearing more. Before service started, we had a name of the person who committed this act. And by the end of service, I stood up and I told you that 49 people had died. The news unfolded in an interesting way in multiple communities. We in our community heard from friends, heard from people who had been there, and we heard gay bar. We heard Pulse. Many of us already knew what Pulse was, and we knew. As things unfolded a little bit more, now I don't really go to bars, I don't keep up with the scene. I had no idea when we were in church that morning that it was Latin night at Pulse. What I do know is that the night before, does anyone remember what we were doing the night, really the night of, the night before the Pulse shooting here at the Our annual drag show was happening that night. And there's a culture of back and forth between Tampa and Orlando with the clubs. And there was a group, and I actually don't know who it was, a group of folks who attended, it was you, let me know, attended our drag show and were headed to Pulse right after the show. And one of the guys in the group kind of got this feeling not to go. And this group of folks didn't go. Over the last year, I've heard many stories like this. And I've heard stories and met people who were there that night. It is something that we cannot comprehend if we weren't there. And yet, at the same time, we can feel it in our bodies. With the little kids this morning, I was talking about dancing. And what does it feel like to dance? I can see Ellie trying not to laugh at me because she knows that I'm a terrible dancer. But I do know what it feels like, believe it or not, to just let go and dance. What does that feel like? Freedom. The kids were telling us that it feels like joy. In our community, in the LGBT community, more often than not, we find that freedom in the places where we are free to move, where we are free to dance and feel comfortable in ourselves, and that tends to be nightclubs. We find sanctuary in the places we need to find sanctuary, and I certainly found bars long before church. A lot of us did, and a lot of MCC churches were founded in bars for just that reason. The place where we feel safe, the place where we can feel whole and loved and accepted. We have multiple communities we mourn in multiple ways. The media ran with this. Of course, it was the biggest news story for weeks. And it was interesting to see church leaders who had never accepted LGBT folks stand up and say nothing about the fact that Pulse is a gay bar. Say nothing about the fact that this is the sanctuary for our people who do not feel safe in their churches, and suddenly grabbing that media attention. I feel like MCC did a great job of, instead of getting up, not just our church, but especially the church in Orlando, Joy MCC, not getting up and jumping in the spotlight, but staying in the trenches where the people were suffering. Our church, MCC Tampa, showed up. We got a call the day after from the folks at Joy, and they said, your choir has a lot of native Spanish-speaking folks, and your choir is amazing, and we need them. And within 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever it was, we were there, and you would have thought that they had been practicing for months. And why is that? It's because we understand sanctuary. We understand what it means to hold sacred space. And we understand in our bodies, in our bones, what it means to have our sacred spaces violated and torn apart. Because every single one of us who has ever been kicked out of a church for who we love or for our gender identity knows what it's like to have sacred space ruined. And for anyone who has ever danced and felt the rhythm of life going through your body, you know what it is like to find that freedom. So we know what it's like to lose the idea of safe space. In that service that our beloved choir went and sang for Stanley Ramos, who's a MCC, a newly ordained MCC pastor, gave this sermon where he explained Pulse in a way that I could not have possibly understood. Because I see it through my lens and my life experience. Reverend Stanley said that when he watched the news, what he saw was people, even people who had been shot, and people pulling friends out who had been shot, and while they were doing that, they were shielding their faces. Now, I had seen the same footage, and it hadn't occurred to me. Because I have had the advantage of living in a family that I didn't have to hide from, and I feel so blessed for that. He said, in his context, as a Hispanic man, he saw what was happening there. He saw these folks, mostly Latina folks, coming out of the club and hiding their faces because although they had been shot at, their biggest concern in that moment was mom and dad and cousins and everyone else, their church families, seeing them on the news and rejecting them for having been in the place where all these people were murdered. Not believed that they were alive, but shamed that they were there on TV. So as they're getting out, barely surviving this, they're hiding their faces. What does this tell me? This tells me that Pulse was church. This tells me that the folks that were there that night, just like clubs all over this country, all over this world, are the place where people feel safe. And when you step outside of your safe zone, you're no longer in that secure place. And when the outside world, the scary outside world comes in, we realize that we don't have safe places. The scripture we heard talks about turning our sorrow into joy. We're told, Jesus tells us, that you will weep and lament, but the world will rejoice. We're told that the suffering of this world is temporary, and uses the metaphor of birth, in which A woman is in agony, and yet the thing that is causing her pain ends up being her greatest joy. I like to think of this metaphor of life coming into this world on a day when we are reflecting on so many who died. Because it is hard for us to get from that place of pain and suffering into the place of joy. I don't know about you, but I suddenly found myself not ready for this anniversary. Because a year ago, life changed. And when we acknowledge that a year ago life changed, it's painful and hard. But where is the joy in this? Where is the joy in honoring this anniversary? Let me be clear. There's no joy in what happened. There never will be joy in what happened. What happened was an atrocity. And yet in this last year, we have learned. In the hours, in the days afterwards, we learned about solidarity. We learned about humanity. We learned about community. The other thing that we were doing that weekend was we were having a memorial service here for Teresa Auger. And a whole lot of us went right from that space to an impromptu Ybor City vigil that had about 1,000 people there. We made that happen because we said, we don't know what's going on. We don't even know if we're safe. But we know we need community. The joy that does come out of tragedy is that we understand community in a new way. One of the seminary students that I've been mentoring this past year, her name's Avery. We were working on a workshop together back in November, and someone brought up the idea of creating the workshop as safe space. And I said, I don't believe in safe space. There are spaces that feel less scary than others, but to say that a space is safe is to set up a false expectation. And Avery told me that there might not be safe space, but there is brave space. That what we have is brave space. The space in which we embody our wholeness, the space in which we live into solidarity, live into who we are, that is brave space. A lot of us, myself included, were scared. We were scared to go to Ybor City the next day, but we needed to be where the people are who are going to the bars. We need to be with our community. A lot of us were scared to come to church, and we put in safety measures for being here. We've got cameras, we've got a security team, but we still feel a little unsafe. But you know what? You can feel a little unsafe and still be incredibly brave. So I invite you into this brave space where we can learn to dance. Our hearts will rejoice, the scripture tells us, and no one will be able to take the joy from us. At 2:02 a.m. is when the bullets started. And at 2:02 a.m. we will not be scared. We will be brave. Even if we feel fearful, even if we think we are scared, we know that our bravery and our brave space fills this sanctuary, the sanctuary that is Pulse and every club out there that is like it. We have chosen, as Kathy McTeague says, the deeper path of living. We are choosing and figuring it out and struggling with how to keep dancing. Sigue bailando. Continue dancing. It is hard, and we are brave. We are called by God to embody that brave space, to honor those we've lost, and to live in solidarity and community with one another.